All right, Shalom, Shalom, by Yaf Yasha'Allah, Kakabashayna, WFI Detroit, coming at you with a live video. First and foremost, I want to give a call, Halam, Yahweh, Bashima Mashiach, Mamlaki Abshah, right? That's all praises to the Heavenly Father, in the name of His only begotten Son, who the world were ignorantly called Jesus the Christ, the anointed Savior of Yasha'Allah, you princes of the power, you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right? The anointed Savior and King, if you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right, shalom, shalom. Right, abaratazaya, having a tawab, right? A good day, and go touch right in this thing, man. Right, we're gonna touch right in this thing, right, with some WFI history. Right, we're gonna go into who is the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph. Right, who is the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph? Right, because right, I actually have a video going into the Egyptian captivity on the Cold Cuts channel. But I just want to touch on this specific thing here, the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph, right? So like, bear with me. So I gotta get this thing to share the screen. Dang old computer always taking it off. Right, shalom, shalom. So I'm finna, right, we go dive right into it. The Pharaoh which knew not Joseph, right? Because contrary to popular belief, right, it's not, right? Contrary to popular belief, it's not who they say Ramses. Right, we go prove that by pulling up the dates. But I just want to be able to share my screen, so bear with me. All right, Salaki, bear with me. So I'm about to see if I can get this thing to share the screen so we can get in there. Right, this computer always doing that, right? Satan always taking away the word. All right, so we go get right into it. We go to the blue letter. Or we go get into the blue letter and pull the account. Right? Let's get Exodus. Exodus, the first chapter. Exodus, the first chapter. Right, we go Exodus chapter 1. Right? I'm going to start at 5. It says, and all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already, right? Because Joseph was sold by his brethren into Egypt, right? Let's get a quick precept, right? Real quick. Let's get the book of Psalm. This is a good book. Get the book of Psalm, chapter 106. It's like I want Psalms 105, right? The book of Psalm, chapter 105, right? In verse number 15, it says, and he sent the man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant, right? Joseph was sold as a servant, right? To Potiphar, right? One of the Egyptian captains, man. All right, because that was a common practice to be sold, for Asiatics to be sold in Egypt, right? Which are just basically men from that region, right? And that's Joseph, right? So Joseph was already in Egypt, and he ended up obtaining a high status so he could bring his brothers into Egypt, right? Because when you jump down, right, to verse 20, it says, the king sent and loosened him, even the ruler of the people, and let him go free, right? Pharaoh, it says, and made him lord in his house and ruler of all his substance, right? To bind his princes at his pleasure and teach his senators wisdom. Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. All right, so Joseph was sold. He was lifted up to the status of vizier, right? And then Israel came into the picture, right? And the vizier is just second in command under Pharaoh, right? Vizier Egypt. All right, let's look it up real quick. But like I said, you got an extensive breakdown on this on the Cold Cuts channel if you type in Egyptian captivity, right? But we just go into a quick little, right? It says the vizier was the highest official in ancient Egypt to serve Pharaoh during the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. All right. So that's what Joseph was. He was a vizier, right? The second in command. All right, let's get another, right? Worldhistory.org, right? It says the vizier in ancient Egypt was the most powerful position after that of the king, right? And that's literally Joseph, right? Right, that's literally what Joseph was, right? Let's get it in the book of Genesis. Right? Genesis chapter 41, right? In verse 40, right? It says, thou shalt be over my house, and according to thy word, all my people shall be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land, right? So that's Joseph. He was set up as a vizier. That's what I mean why he was already in the land, right? So Exodus 1:6, and Joseph died and all his brethren and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them, right? So they was dwelling in the best of the land of Goshen. All right, that's where they were dwelling, the land of Goshen. And if you check it out, right, let's look up Goshen, right? Let's look up Goshen, right? It's like, yeah, my screen getting shared, all praise. All right, so let's look up Goshen, right? Yeah, I want to look up Goshen on the map. All right, bear with me, right? I wanted to say Goshen for Israel. Right, the land of Goshen is right around this area in the Delta. All right, it's right in the Delta region. Right, you see like Pathon, Ramses, right? The field of Zoan, right? That's what Goshen is. So even when you get a map, like I just had a real good map like this, right? It'll show you all the desert region, but it's around the Nile is green. But this is where the Nile breaks off to. So this is the best of the land right here. All the rivers, right? Right. So depth in that area, right? That is hard to find archaeology, man. Right? Because it's so depth there. So this is the best of the land because it was a famine in Canaan. Right. So we went there and we multiplied and grew. We were nourished in the land of Egypt. Right. Let me get that precept real quick. Well, I'm going to pull it up on here. Right. I'm going to just pull it up on here. Right. Let's get that in Judith. Right. Judith 5 and I believe 9. That's what I want. Right. Judith chapter 5. Right. In verse number 10. Right. Judith chapter 5 and verse 10. It says, but when a famine covered all the land of Canaan, they went down into Egypt and sojourned there while they were nourished and became a great multitude so that one could not number their nation. So they went from this small amount of people to this great mighty nation, right? It was 600,000 men coming out of Egypt, right? Men. That's not even including the kids. You see, it was 70 souls, but they grew, right? Let's get that in Exodus. Actually, let's get, I believe it's Iraq. I think it's one that's Iraq. I can't think of that one. What is it? It's Iraq. I want to say the 16th chapter. Right? Sirach chapter 6. And I'm going to start at verse 29. It says, he pitied not the people of perdition who were taken away in their sins, nor the 600,000 footmen who were gathered together in the hardness of their hearts. Right? That's talking about the men of 20 and older in Israel, man. Right? 600,000 footmen, they were gathered in the hardness of their hearts because we kept scoffing and going against the Lord, man. So the Lord said he didn't spare them, right? Because he literally delivered them all up, besides Caleb and Joshua, right? Into the wilderness and death, man. Only Caleb and Joshua seen the promised land, right? But nonetheless, it was 600,000 footmen, right? And it started off with 70, right? So they grew abundantly, man, right? And again, that's 70,000 men. That was warriors, right? That's not including the women and children. All right, so the land was filled with them. That's very important, right? Because we go get the timeline in this and figure out what's going on, Right? It says, now there was a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Right? So this is a new king over Egypt, a new Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph. Joseph was the right-hand man of the Pharaoh. Right? But you had a new king rise up. And this man, right, you go pull him up. This man is known as Utmost the First. And Utmost the First is the Pharaoh that knew not Joseph. Right? And we go bring it out. Right? Because when you get the dates, you got to base it off the high chronology, because they got different dates for the most part. But this is his reign here, 1570 BC, right, to 1546 BC. Right, so that's important to know, because when was the Exodus? Right, when was the Exodus? Let's figure this thing out. Let's get the book of 1 Kings, chapter 6 and 1, right, to figure out the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph. Right, the book of 1 Kings, chapter 6 and verse 1. Right, it says, and it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were going out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Egypt, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, and he began to build the house of Yahweh. Right, so in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, that was 480 years after we came out of Egypt. Right, so when was Solomon's reign? That's the question. So you can look in the 4th year, right? King Solomon, right? You know, he reigned 40 years. King Solomon reigned, right, in 970 BC. So 4 years would be 966 BC, right? So let's just pull up a calculator. The numbers get bigger when you go in BC, right? When you go in time, it don't get smaller. So if you got 966, you got to add 480 years. What do you get? 1446 BC. This is the date of the Exodus. This is the date of the Exodus. Right? Now, we have to understand how long was Israel in Egypt. It tells you how long we was in Egypt altogether, right? Let's get that in Acts. I want to say the 7th chapter. 13. Right, let's get Acts chapter 13. Right, Acts chapter. All right, bear with me. Acts chapter 13. Right, okay, it might be in 7 then. All right, right, the book of Acts chapter 7. Right, the book of Acts chapter 7, right, verse number 6, it says, and God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they will bring them into bondage and entreat them evil for 400 years. Right, when you get the book of Exodus, right, let's get it. Right, I believe it's the 12th chapter. I tell you, it's there for 430 years, right, to be exact. Right, so that fulfilled that prophecy. It's like Exodus 20, Exodus chapter 12. Right, Exodus chapter 12, and all right, bear with me. Right, Exodus chapter 12, right, going to the footman. Right, verse 41. Right, it says, and it came to pass, right, at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. All right, 430 years. That's how long they was in Egypt. Right, so add another 430 to this. This is when they first came into Egypt. Right, so Joseph came into Egypt around this time period, 1876. Right, Joseph came into Egypt, or the rest of Israel came into Egypt. All right, 1876. Right around this time period during the Old Kingdom of Egypt, because we was in Egypt for 430 years by the time of the Exodus. Right, but we weren't in slavery this whole time because we got nourished up. All right. So give me a second here. Now I want to, now we got this timeline established. I want to deal with Joseph. So Joseph was, actually, we ain't got to deal. We just got the timeline. I'm gonna keep. He said, "Can I give the title?" I did. The title of the video on the cold cuts, I can pull it up. Right. I want to know the actual video. Right, where I go more in depth, I'm touching on more things than just the Pharaoh. Right, if you type in cold cuts, Egyptian captivity, it should pop right up. Oh, it's lucky for my spelling. That word always confusing me. Right, if you just type in cold cuts Egyptian captivity, it's right here. The 7 major captivities of Egypt. It's a long video, but I'm kind of going into it. Right, I'm kind of going into it. All right. So yeah, that's a good video to watch, but it'd be utmost the first, because during the time when Joseph was originally there, right, it was peace. But then you had a famine hit Egypt. Hit Egypt and the land of Canaan. So you had Canaanites migrating into the land, right? And we know that because let's get that in the Exodus at like 45. It's not Exodus, like Genesis, like 45. Right, okay. It might be 43 or 42, something like that. Okay, it's 42. It is the verse chapter right after. All right, I want to get a certain point. It's the book of Exodus chapter 42 and verse. Well, first I'm gonna start at 1, then I'm gonna jump down. Right, it says, now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, right, now where was Jacob dwelling? Right, it was in the land of Canaan. Right, he says, Jacob said unto his sons, why do you look upon one another? Like, why y'all just standing around, huh? That's how you know that's Jake. And what y'all doing is standing around looking at each other, right? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down there and buy us from thence, that we may live and not die. Right, so people would go down to from Canaan to buy food in Egypt, right? Because there was a famine in the land of Canaan, like it's in verse 5. But I'm gonna jump down. Right, to verse 23. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake to them by an interpreter. Right, so it was normal for it to be an interpreter around that time. Now I want to pull up something, see if I can find this. If I can find something on this. Delta. Maybe if I type in the Delta. Basically, it's in that video, but the Delta, right? It was a area. It was like a hub for other nations to go to, and the Delta is where Goshen was at. So other nations was known for going to the Delta, right? Migrating at the Delta. I want to see if I can, maybe if I look it up. I want to keep this up. I'm gonna pull up this. I can kind of pull this up, Lord willing. Right. Pull up something quick on it. Right. This is actually a whole book on it, but it says, right, it says the Nile Delta as a center of cultural interactions between Upper Egypt and the northern and southern Levant in the 4th millennium BC. This volume is part of and concludes the slide here. All right. See if there's anything else in that. So that's it on that. So they got a whole book on it, right? It says, well, I want to start here. So, although originally planned as this is just talking about what it was planned as, but it's just showing that you know, that they have big relationships with their neighboring areas. And like I said in the other video, I'll go into it. So that's just proof that nations would go to the northern delta to be risen up. I mean, to, you know, it's like a hub for different cultures and languages and different nations, because Egypt was an actual friendly type of nation, right? Now I'm gonna get that real quick. I have no idea how to spell his name, but we go kind of get in this thing. Let me find it. I'm about to play this video, right, just to show Epimetheus, right? Epimetheus, right? And this video I want. Yeah, this the video. So we go deal with this video in a second, right? But I want to you know, well, the video actually go explain it. So I'm gonna just play the video. I don't want this to be too long.
Everything.
Hold on to those stocks, honey.
The world is full of financial noise. Our advisors use insights from global experts to keep your investments on track. JP Morgan Wealth Management.
Grammarly helps you work more efficiently, which makes accomplishing your work goals easier.
Right, so I'm gonna skip through this video. All right. Okay, this is just about where I want it to be. Maybe start it like here.
If it's something you find valuable. So I would definitely recommend, which had flourished during the intermediate period of strife, separating the Old and Middle Kingdoms. For 1,000 years, Egypt had coveted Nubia's ebony, incense, ivory, and especially gold mines, and had raided there for generations. During the Middle Kingdom, Egypt sought to permanently incorporate it into the Egyptian realm. And that,
right, in the Middle Kingdom, this is during the time, right, let me pull it up, right? This is during the time when you got Joseph, right? This is the time when Joseph would have came, right? Middle, I just want to get the date. Right, he pulls them up, but see that, right? 240 or 2040 to 1782 BC, right? That's the time of Joseph. Like, remember, Israel came into Egypt 430 years from 446, which is 1876, right? So this is during this kingdom, right?
after waging many large-scale campaigns and building a series of massive forts along the Nile, all of Lower Nubia was brought under Egyptian control, and enlisted many Nubians into the ranks of their army, and eventually brought Kerma under their influence.
And the Kerma, those are actually Cushites.
For a time. After securing Nubia, especially its gold mines, Egypt turned to Canaan. The Pharaoh Senwosret III.
Right, Senwosret III. Right, this is the Pharaoh around the time of Joseph.
Campaigned there, forcing the rulers of the local city-states to become Egyptian vassals.
And then Canaan became Egyptian vassals.
Following this, there was a considerable peaceful immigration from Canaan into the Delta region of the Nile.
Now, following this, You got to check this part out. Check this out.
Local city-states to become Egyptian vassals. Following this, there was a considerable peaceful integration from Canaan into the delta region of the Nile.
Into the delta region of the Nile. Right, you had Hebrews dwelling there, and you had Canaanites dwelling in the delta region of the Nile. Right, because even, right, let's get that in Exodus or Genesis. Right, read that might be 45. Them. Right, might be 46 then. Yo, we gotta find this thing. Okay, I'm trying to find this. Right, Genesis chapter 47, and what I want the point verse. Okay, this is what I want. Verse number 20 says, and Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them, so the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them from the cities. Right? He removed them 2 cities from one end of the borders of Egypt, even to the other end thereof. Right? So he moved them up out of there, man. Got the Egyptians up out of there, man. Right? So now you got people coming and migrating.
During the late Middle Kingdom period, a series of irregular Nile floods eroded the public perception of the pharaoh's spiritual power. In the 17th century BC, the Hyksos established that...
Now, they saying a series of floods, but, other sources, and mainly the scriptures, that tell you it was a famine, right? Something that weakened Egypt, right? For this to happen, the Hyksos,
independent fortified city-state of Avaris in the Nile Delta, and conquered all of Lower Egypt by around 1640 BC.
Right, so you had Israel growing, right, in around 6040 BC. That's when the Hyksos came into reign. Right, now the Hyksos, right, he go explain it, but it's like basically Canaanites and different foreigners reigning, because that's what Hyksos actually means, right? Some people say Israel was the Hyksos, but you understand, we can't really substantiate that. Could be proof that maybe some Israelites was a part of that, but it just means rulers from a foreign land, right? That's what it says here, rulers of foreign lands. That's what Hyksos means. That's what the Egyptians called them. Now this is why it's so important to understand the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph, right? It's lucky, right? So let's deal with it.
They were likely a people of mixed Levantine origin.
Right, they were mixed Levantine origin.
Unlikely candidates include Canaanite, Amorite, and Hurrian peoples. Other theories popular in the past have included the biblical Hebrews, Mitanni, and Hittites. Also, the view of a rapid, unexpected invasion has gone out of vogue, and it is increasingly viewed that the Hyksos, in large part or in whole, were comprised of the Canaanite immigrants that had been migrating to the Nile Delta for generations.
Right, so that's basically saying, basically they understand. It's like they understand for the most part, right, that this had to be people that was dwelling there already for a period of time, right? Which goes into that the migration of the Hyksos. The Canaanites going in there with the flood and everything. Right, you even had a road called Horus Road that went straight from the land of the Philistines on down. Right, so it was normal for Canaanites to go there.
Taking advantage of this Egyptian weakness, the Nubians of Kerma carved out a formidable kingdom for themselves.
All right, so now you got Kerma. They see that they weak and they kind of start taking over too. And now this little blue area that's known as the Thabian dynasty.
Capturing or destroying the Egyptian fortresses in the region and retaking the most productive gold mines of the ancient world. Only a small, semi-independent native Egyptian state existed at Thebes, which became a vassal of the Hyksos. The Hyksos adopted Egyptian culture to a great extent, practicing Egyptian religion and portraying themselves in a similar way as past pharaohs. Composite bows, the horse and chariot, and bronze working were all introduced to the Egyptians by the Hyksos. The Hyksos ruled in Egypt for over a century, until being overthrown by the Theban dynasty.
They got overthrown by the Theban dynasty. Right? This is where Utmost comes in. Right? Utmost. Right? He's known, he's a pharaoh and founder of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Right? Classified as the first dynasty of the new kingdom of Egypt, the era in which Egypt would achieve the peak of its power. Right? He was a member of the Theban royal house. Right? And it even tells you right here, during his reign, Utmost completed the conquest and expulsion of the Hyksos from the Nile Delta, restored Theban rule over the whole Egypt, and successfully reasserted Egyptian power in its formerly subject territories of Nubia and Canaan. Right? So he basically reconquered everything, man. Right? And got back in that power. Right? So they was crushed and shut down for about a century. So when Utmost rose up, and guess what, man? He wasn't dealing with Slaki. He wasn't dealing with the nations. Yes, like he wasn't dealing with nations that he didn't know being. Well, he wasn't dealing with nations that he didn't know being in his land. Right. This is actually when Egypt became more militarized. Right. Let's go say that.
Whoever the Hyksos were, or how they came to power, is unclear. In contrast to the impact they had on Egyptian society, which became much more warlike. The more than 15
It became more warlike, right? Hence, when you read Exodus, the first chapter, right? Exodus chapter 1, right? Where it says in verse 9, and he said unto his people, behold, the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. All right? He just reconquered, just got that power. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and they come to pass when they're falling without any war, right? They join also into our enemies. They just explored the Hyksos. They just got rid of the Nubians and Kermit and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Right? So it's saying these people, they could probably join unto our enemies and fight with them. Right? So they had to put slaves over them and dealt wisely with us, man. Right? Just like they dealt wisely with them Amalekites, man. And they said, look, we're finna go to this camp, whatever, shelter you from the war. But they was throwing them in ovens, man. Right? So it's the same thing. However it happened, he dealt wisely, and all hell broke loose. Right?
100 years of Egyptian history before the Hyksos, Egypt had survived without any serious threat of being conquered. In the past, out of every 100 able-bodied men, one was called up in times of campaign or crisis. During the Egyptian New Kingdom that followed, 1 out of every 10 able-bodied men was called to serve in the military.
You see that? So they became more warlike during the New Kingdom, 570 BC, all the way through, right? But it starts with this guy here, man, 570 BC, right? Utmost the first. He's the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph and put the Israelites in captivity, right? When you keep reading, it says, therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them in their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Now, people wonder why it says Ramses here. You got to understand the Bible, it gets copied, it gets scribed out. Right, so the scribes, whoever was scribing the law, they would have called it what it was called during that time, right? Which would have been Ramses. It's been called Ramses, Avaris, Goshen, all these different places. So that's why that certain city is called Ramses. All right, and I'm gonna skip down, right? I'm gonna just keep reading. It says, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all service and manner in the field. All their service when they were made to serve was with rigor. And this is how you also notice this is Moses, because when he came into power, check out what he did, right? With the reunification of Upper and Lower Egypt under Utmost, a renewal of royal support for arts and monumental construction occurred, right? Utmost reportedly devoted a tenth of all productive output towards the service of the traditional gods, reviving massive monumental structures as well as arts. You see that? It says, however, as the defeat of the Hyksos occurred relatively late in his reign, his son, right, pretty much his son, Amenhotep I, carried out the rest of this stuff, right? But when you check this out, it says Utmost reopened the Tural limestone quarries to provide stone for monuments, right? And use Asiatic cattle from Phoenicia to haul stone according to his coral inscription. You see that? So he made them build this stuff back up with bricks, right? It's like he made them build this stuff back up with bricks, man. All right, he opened up that limestone maker, man. It was providing us with the bricks, because remember, they used to provide us with bricks. All right, they actually provided us with the bricks. All right, let's get there. Let's get Exodus 5. Right. Right, it's, Exodus 5 and 6, it says, and Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, ye shall no more give people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves, right? So they was bringing it to the people, right? So they was hauling the stones, and then they start having us do that, man. Right? So that's the Pharaoh which knew not Joseph in this thing, man. Right? Utmost the first through the Spirit. Right? So with that, I'm going to give a Kwame Yashala, right? Lord willing, that was edifying. Right? You know, you got to get into this history, right? I love y'all. Stay fast and stay praying. Right? Shalom, shalom.